Hello, everyone. My name's Alan Black. I want to thank you, Joe, for inviting me. I have to say I'm really humbled to be presenting this story. It's not my story. I'm a lawyer, and I represent clients who have been affected by drug shortages. And frankly, I've never met a stronger, braver group of people. It is truly humbling to see the hardship they face. And one of the reasons I wanted to talk to you today is because if you think about it, well, let me just ask. I also teach law, so of course I use the Socratic method. What's the point of science? Can somebody just yell it out to me? Why are we here? Anybody can define what's the motive? Yeah, just yell it. Right, so it's for the betterment of mankind. You know, this isn't a philosophical pursuit, some sort of narcissistic, discussion of issues. At the end of the day, we want our science to be available to the people. And in fact, arguably, drug shortages are the failure of science. What's happened is thousands of researchers have done the work to determine the etiology of a disease, to build a drug to treat the disease, and then ultimately the drug is marketed. But at some point, for some reason, and I'll talk about it in a little more, the drug's not made anymore. So people get sick or die that otherwise wouldn't have. And of course, for most of us, publication, although that's important, it isn't the last step. We want to see our science in action. And I am a lawyer, and for that I apologize. But I am also a scientist. I was an assistant professor in biochemistry before I became a lawyer. So I'm very familiar with sort of both sides of the coin. In fact, one of the reasons I became a lawyer was to be a patent lawyer. I was going to sit in my cubicle and draft patent applications. But it turned out that I was going to be doing some other work, and this started about 3 years ago. And as you can see, drug shortages in the United States are now reaching epidemic proportions. Now, actually, I should say for the scientists or doctors here, too, I want to ask, too, let's say that a shortage does happen. There are two kinds of shortages. There's the shortage where nobody gets anything, and then there's the shortage where some of the drug is produced, but not enough for everyone to be treated. I'm going to present two cases that represent both kinds of shortages. The first question I have, again for the medical folks out there, how do you fairly distribute a drug that is in short supply? Can somebody tell me, or somebody, a physician here? Yes. Sorry? Right, we ration it. How do we make that rationing decision? Right, so that's triage. There is another method of rationing, which is to essentially dilute the medication. So everybody gets the same amount, just a lower amount. Now, that sounds fair until you go into surgery and everybody's getting the same low dose of anesthesia. So it doesn't make sense a lot of times in a biological perspective to dilute. I didn't know this until my friend was diagnosed with Fabry disease. It's a rare genetic illness. He, of course, is a victim of a drug shortage. And he started talking to me about, well, what do I do? How can I get access to the drug? Well, here's what I found out. The people who choose the survivors during drug shortages are not the M.D.s at the FDA. They're not the Public Health Service Corps at the NIH. They're not trained public health authorities. They're not doctors. They're not patients. They're the CEOs of the pharmaceutical companies. And at least for the CEOs that I won't talk about them in particular, but the companies are run by primarily economists and M.B.A.s. And here's where I became involved. When my friend came to me, he talked to the FDA. We tried reaching out to the NIH. We talked to public health authorities. We talked to doctors. Doctors were extremely frustrated, but they said there's nothing we can do. They won't ship us enough drug. Of course, the scientists, the folks who had invented these drugs, we didn't hear from them. And then there are pharma and pharma-funded patient groups. I'll let you decide whether they are helpful or not. But ultimately, my clients called a lawyer. My job is to give an unconflicted voice or be an unconflicted advocate for my clients. I have only one purpose, and that is to get my clients drugs. And sadly, what I found out is the new healthcare paradigm, if you will, because nobody is responsible for drug shortages right now. It's the patient's duty to protect themselves. So if you need a drug in the future, your best bet is to stockpile it. Of course, that makes no sense from a public health perspective, but it's the reality. And if you haven't stockpiled it and you're hit with a drug shortage, you can't call anybody except a lawyer. And I'd say that's pretty bad. When you're sick, you have to call a lawyer. This is the Fabrazyme drug dilution case. This is what I became involved in initially. Fabry disease affects about 1,500 people in the United States. It's considered a rare disease. It's a genetic illness that's passed on. It's usually deadly, particularly to males, by the time they're 50. My best friend and godfather of my daughter was diagnosed with the disease. But luckily, there was a drug available. It's called Fabrazyme. And in Fabry disease, the oils and fats, a certain kind, build up in the kidneys, the heart, the liver, and you die essentially from heart failure or kidney failure by the time you're about 50. But this drug's available. It replaces the enzyme that the body doesn't make, breaks down the fats. It's very effective. In fact, we as taxpayers funded it through NIH. Mount Sinai licensed the patent to Fabrazyme to Genzyme Corporation. This was about 6 years ago, maybe 8. The very interesting part of this, of course, is that it's such a technologically difficult drug to make. It costs $250,000 a year to take. So basically, nobody can afford this without government assistance. Prior to June of 2009, Genzyme was making enough drug for the world's supply. They were somehow contaminated the reactor vessels. These vessels are basically genetically engineered cells that produce this protein, which is then purified and then infused intravenously into patients every 2 weeks. The output decreased. So they were faced with the dilemma we talked about. We have too many patients and not enough drug. On top of it, they contaminated the production facilities with glass, rubber, and steel particles. So essentially, these particles were being infused IV into patients. The government got involved and fined them. And they were making a lot of money. So Genzyme implemented a rationing plan. They reduced the doses, for Americans at least, 70%. And by reduction in dose, it's a reduction in time. So instead of getting it every 2 weeks, you might get it once a month. You might get it once every 2 months. But in any event, the disease progresses, the fats build up, and you get sick. The shortage continued for almost 3 years. The FDA-approved dose is 1 milligram per kilogram every 2 weeks. But no patient in the United States was allowed to take this amount of medication. Of course, the lower doses were never tested. And then I was asked a question, it's like, well, isn't this illegal? And yes, it is. You cannot ship drug into commerce that is not properly labeled. Obviously, this wasn't properly labeled. However, the FDA was involved on site monitoring this facility. So my presumption, again, I don't know all the facts yet, is that the FDA decided that they weren't going to enforce this rule. This is a letter from one of my client's doctors writing Genzyme. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but basically he says, Genzyme, the dosing results in inadequate therapeutic treatment. I'm not going to prescribe it at this low dose, and even if they only ship it to my client or my patients at low dose, I'll give it to them, but under protest. So that's when I came in. My buddy and I, we go to football games. He's talking to me about the problem with getting access to the drug, and he's not feeling well. He's like, what can I do, Alan? And so I put on my lawyer hat, and I said, well, wait a minute. This drug was paid for by the American public. And it turns out that there is an exception to the patent regulations where a technology is developed with taxpayer funding. Essentially, it is illegal to misuse or not use a technology. So we petitioned the National Institutes of Health for a march-in license. This is a type of compulsory license. It would allow another manufacturer to essentially use the patent to make the drug. The NIH came back and said, no, that's going to take too long. Genzyme's promised to have this back on the market in a full supply by early 2011. So that's the last we heard of NIH. Of course, this date was completely wrong. Well, then I started looking at repetitioning. I did repetition the NIH after I found this out. Got to hear, bless Google. I never would have found this. Nobody would have. But apparently what Genzyme was doing was shipping full doses, every 1 milligram per kilogram every 2 weeks to Europe. So the American supply was dropping while the European supply remained the same. And the European Medicines Agency, the equivalent of the FDA, had actually done the testing. They found that the reduced dose was dangerous and ineffective. It could even accelerate the course of the disease. Patients were having strokes. My clients have had strokes, kidney failure. So anyway, Genzyme had returned to a full dose in Europe once the European Medicines Agency said it is dangerous. This was 2010, I believe. So anyway, while Americans were basically placed on, they were either on low dose if they had been a customer prior to the shortage, or they were given nothing if they were diagnosed after the shortage. Well, they were adding European patients while Americans were being rationed. Well, at this point, of course, I repetitioned the NIH and the FDA, and I said, look, this is just crazy. You guys have to give full doses to Americans. The FDA and the NIH are still considering these petitions. That was 2 years ago. And as far as I'm concerned, march-in's a dead letter. There is no protection, at least agency-wise, for a taxpayer invention that's not deployed into the public. The real question is, why did they do it? And there are two hypotheticals. The first one is that Genzyme made a financial decision, or Europeans just naturally are weaker and need higher doses. We've never gotten an explanation as to why this was done, but here's what we believe, and I've alleged in the lawsuits. Overseas, an alternative drug was being made called Repligal. It's the same enzyme, it's the same protein sequence, it's produced in a slightly different manner. It's not FDA approved in the U.S. So what was happening, of course, is that patients who were put on the low dose were switching in droves to the Repligal product. Well, what's a CEO to do? There's no alternative in the U.S. market, so there's really no threat of loss of market share. So up the dose in Europe. That's what we believed happened. Oh, and just to make matters even more unbelievable, Mount Sinai sued Repligal, or sued Shire in Germany for patent infringement during the shortage, even though, of course, patients at Mount Sinai could not get a full dose. So what's the current status? Well, the FDA declared the shortage over in March of 2012. Genzyme opened up a new manufacturing facility, but to my knowledge, there were clients that didn't get a full dose until July of 2012. So the shortage wasn't truly over. Shire had been asked to come into the marketplace. The FDA, we're told by Shire that the FDA was opposing approval of Repligal despite it being used in Europe for 10 years. And of course, if you're an American, you're going to be buying Genzyme's product whether you like it or not. All of the patients, every one of my clients have reported increase in symptoms, kidney disease. I've got those who have had heart transplants, kidney transplants, multiple strokes, hearing loss. Many can't work. Some people can't walk. It just goes on and on. So this is the first suit that I filed. I partnered with a friend of mine in Pittsburgh and filed a contingency fee class action. We don't charge anybody anything. And at the time we had 14 patients. Now we're up to about 70. Strangely, when we filed, the courts moved, well, there was a motion to move to Boston. The court there, even though we briefed the case a year ago, still hasn't given us any feedback or anything like that. So certainly disappointing there. There was another case that was brought in Utah. It's a wrongful death case. The Fabry disease patient died from symptoms. He didn't get a full dose in time. And that one's moved forward. And I have to say, this case always keeps surprising me. Genzyme's defense was that the doctors are ultimately responsible. And so it's essentially, I guess, in their view, malpractice. So, yeah, they wouldn't give them the full doses, but it was the doctor ultimately who decided to give it to them. Well, at this point, we're realizing the government's not going to help us out here. So I filed a civil rights case, essentially alleging that the HHS, FDA, NIH knew of these violations. They knew of the discrimination that was going on. The discrimination, of course, is national discrimination based on national origin, and did nothing about it. We've fully briefed the case in D.C. We haven't got a decision yet. It's been about, I guess, 3 months. And, of course, the Department of Justice is arguing that the case is just meritless and it should be tossed. Well, now that I had gotten involved in the Fabrazyme case, I have folks calling me from all kinds of shortages. I've had a doxal ovarian cancer patient call me. I had this lady call me from Tampa, and she said, I need vitamin A, and I can't get it. And the problem was that Hospira Corporation is the sole supplier of injectable vitamin A in the United States. If you don't get vitamin A in your diet, you go blind and you die of infection. In fact, lack of vitamin A is the leading cause of preventable blindness in the world. The WHO, the World Health Organization, had hoped to eradicate this disease by 2010. But now, of course, it's worse than ever. Because the world's run out of injectable vitamin A. There's only one producer, or licensed producer. Hospira is a monopoly. Now, it's a licensed monopoly, if you will, but nobody else is allowed to make this drug. It decided to change manufacturing sites. It's unclear what the motives were in changing manufacturing sites, but you should know Hospira is the leading corporation in creating drug shortages. So what had happened is they wanted to move from Lake Forest, Illinois to a new plant in, I believe, South Carolina. Instead of just opening the new plant and then shutting the old plant, they shut the old plant down first with the plan to open the new plant. That didn't happen. They had stockpiled vitamin A, injectable vitamin A, but by the time my client was diagnosed with vitamin A deficiency, that supply had not only dwindled, it was essentially gone. So we brought a suit in Florida. We sued Hospira Corporation for essentially negligence. They foresaw the shortage. In fact, they kind of planned it. They planned to, take care of vitamin A patients throughout the world by creating a stockpile. The judge hated the case. This case was kicked out in 2 days. It's very short, but basically it says, Judge Moody said, there is no authority that supports my client's argument that a drug manufacturer like Hospira has a duty to continue supplying a patient with a drug that knows the patient relies upon for his or her medical health. He didn't buy that they were negligent in their planning for stockpiling. And interestingly, a lot of these drug companies have created... how am I on time here? Oh, goodness gracious. Well, I'm going to run it on. I didn't pay attention. In any event, let me move on. So what's a lawyer scientist to do? I'm stuck. I don't know what to do as a lawyer. So the scientist part of me kicked in. This drug's available on the internet. It's used to treat cattle. Cattle do not go blind. I ordered it. It is the same stuff. It's emulsifiable. It dissolves into the blood. October 15th. Oh, and guys, don't tell my wife I did this. I injected 50,000 units intradermally just to see what happened. I just had to know. And the injection site didn't become inflamed, or I didn't have an allergic reaction at 24 hours. There was a little pain and induration. But by 48 hours, there was just a red spot left. So the results obviously are disappointing. Vitamin A doesn't kill attorneys. But you know what? We have a source of vitamin A, and I also have you guys as a source. I know there are doctors out here who want to help. I know that there are scientists out here who want to help, and it's important, I think, most of all, that people be aware of the problem and begin to apply their own background to helping to solve it. I will be petitioning the FDA to assist these patients now that we've identified a source. Obviously, nobody should take cattle vitamin A, but maybe it can be purified and produced in a way that can be made safe for human beings. And we've been here before. This happened with the AIDS crisis, the government indifference, the difficulty in getting the science to the people. Thank you very much.